All right. Hi, everyone. I'm the Philosophy Bro Junkie for the purposes of this video, and we're here with the Woke Music Addict, aka Dusty Cubes, aka Dustin Cubit, and we're talking about the Canadian psychologist Gabor Mate's book, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. And basically, it's about his experience in working with addicts in safe injection sites in Vancouver, and him talking about how the problem with addiction is trauma, and people become addicts because they've experienced trauma that they haven't dealt with. That's why people some people who use drugs don't become addicts because they haven't experienced that additional trauma in addition to heavy drug use. And then also that the solution is compassion and counseling and treatment and safe injection sites rather than throwing drug addicts in prison and just not addressing the root of the problem at all. And yeah, I think it's a really good book, and it has this more useful message about drug addicts and drug addiction than than like the classic message that you hear sometimes from conservatives in particular still, that drug addicts are just bad people and we need to lock them up and all that shit. So yeah, I know you enjoyed this book too, Dusty. So what are your thoughts about it in general?
Yeah, I really like the format. We kind of split it up in between like a memoir and then like a science journal, kind of going more into the scientific intricacies of what makes somebody addicted and what type of risk factors contribute to that. But yeah, I really enjoyed the memoir. That was really interesting, as well as his message about harm reduction instead of using kind of what the conservative. Um, well, harm reduction is touted as a pro scientific method of dealing with people who have drug addictions,
Hmm.
while I guess what you call the conservative method, which would be indifference and um, anti science. I don't know how to explain it, but um,
Yeah, it's
they treat
more
like
like just punishment rather than rehabilitation.
yeah, they treat it as punishment or like a moral failing. Therefore, the system has to punish this person for their moral failure.
Hmm.
Whereas this book does kind of target a lot of the risk factors that people have that make them prone to addiction.
Hmm.
And it's not even has doesn't even have to be drugs.
Yeah,
As
that's what I was thinking about too. One of my favorite parts of the book was when he was talking about how he's a workaholic, so his addiction is work, and he has demonstrated many times some of the exact same behaviors as some of the like coke or heroin junkies that he's helped treat.
okay, but yeah, it was really interesting. I know I had seen clips of him talking on various podcasts and talk shows on YouTube, but yeah, this book was really interesting. I'm definitely gonna look into some of his other works just to check it out. I'm not
Yeah.
sure how when this was published, but it's definitely something to think about when political discussions happen around how do you deal with drug addictions and what type of consequences or rehabilitation should be enabled for people who are prone to these types of things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it looks like it was published in 2008. He had a new one that came out, I think last year, maybe. It was pretty good too. A lot of the similar stuff, but different stuff too. But yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, kind of similarly to Dr. Carl Hart, who we've talked about before, Gabor Mate has this sort of healthier mindset that, like, for one thing, uh, um, he even more so, Dr. Carl Hart, even more so than Gabor Mate, talks about how, people exaggerate the dangerousness of drugs too, but, they also have what I think is the more like scientifically correct mindset about addiction that like you were talking about, which is, I guess, the best example of this in the book to me was that he talked about how um, a lot of the people who a lot of soldiers became heroin addicts in Vietnam, and most of them, when they came back from Vietnam, were not addicted to heroin. They were able to get off of it, but the ones who remained addicted to it were the ones who had experienced childhood trauma that they hadn't dealt with, and it's often stuff like they got beaten by their parents or raped or some terrible shit like that.
All right, childhood trauma, or had certain mental things that also raises a risk factor for becoming addicted. Like I think
Yeah,
ADHD was one that he had mentioned in the book. That he
yeah,
mentioned a lot of his patients suffered from it, um,
yeah.
which he correlated with it as a risk factor for addiction.
hmm Yeah, that's interesting too, when he talks about the various psychological conditions that can increase your chances of becoming an addict, and the way that they can interact with various drugs, and some drugs can make those worse.
Right. And someone who's had a nicotine addiction, I can totally like relate to these people and how difficult it is to just like get rid of this dependence on something. And it's not like all of these people, and including myself, were self-aware. I wasn't in denial that I was not addicted to cigarettes. I knew for sure I had a nicotine addiction. Um, but yeah, it's I don't know. It's just that harm reduction is kind of the theme of this book when we're talking about really what can we do about this problem.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like it's
because
like it's
like
so
ignoring the
it's
problem doesn't solve it. Is
Yeah,
basically what it's
exactly,
saying.
exactly. Like you're just going to you're just going to have addicts forever. I mean, if you want to have less addicts in your society, then the more effective way is to, have things like safe injection sites and psychological counseling. And then because if you just arrest these people and put them in prison, and then they come out and they have criminal records and they're homeless and stuff, it's just it just often becomes an endless cycle because people don't really have any chance to change themselves.
And there's also a crime associated with those people who don't have jobs, and
Exactly.
in order to fulfill the addiction requirements, they're willing to do things that are unlawful.
hmm
So I think what he does talk about is like methadone is a safe way to give these narcotic addicted patients away from going to street drugs,
like heroin.
which yeah, on which you need money. And those drugs aren't safe. They can be cut with all kinds of different things.
Because they're
And
illegal, as Dr. Hart talks about, right?
right, so since they're illegal, there's no regulation about the manufacture of the goods. And this is one of the things that I find interesting. Basically, one of the most interesting things that we can talk about is relate how the drug trade, like the illegal drug trade, is like the most libertarian system that I can think of.
That's a good point. Yeah. I read this book once called Narconomics, which was about how, a lot of the cartels are like really financially efficient, like they're financially financial geniuses in some ways, and a lot of the cartels are basically like massive illegal corporations that are experts at making record profits. And
Right.
they do have kind of like a libertarian philosophy because they don't have to have any regulation, right?
Right. And this whole, because there are some libertarians that say, oh, the market will, solve
Yeah, the
these
market
problems.
will magically metaphysically balance everything. It's like they have a metaphysical belief in the market.
Right. And then we have this issue with fentanyl, which is like a really cheap manufactured version of narcotics. And it's super unsafe,
Hmm.
which is why we see like this total boost in mortality when it comes to overdosing. And this libertarian machine, without any regulations, doesn't is not self-correcting itself.
Yeah, that's for sure. I
And we could
remember
see what
that
happens when something gets out of hand in
that reminds
the
me,
name of profit.
this is a little off topic, but it just in terms of the libertarian thing, it reminded me of Kyle Kalinske and Crystal Ball interviewing a libertarian presidential candidate on their show, and they couldn't get him to admit that lack of regulation was the problem in I forget what country that was, but that's maybe it was Venezuela, that South American country that recently experienced massive unnecessary property damage due to earthquakes because the someone was someone was bribed in order to be okay with like flawed
Oh, that's in
construction
Turkey.
methods that didn't meet safety standards. Yeah, Turkey. Yeah. That's what it was. They couldn't get him to admit that lack of regulation was a problem with that.
Yeah, it's kind of like the fundamental flaw of those who are ideologically married to a very particular idea.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is libertarianism, in my view, is like pretty inflexible.
Yeah.
Um, they have to kind of worship the idea that the market solves everything and the market is this completely unflawed mechanism,
Yeah.
um, which that's not true at all. The
Like to
market's
me, yeah,
motivation is capital. It's
to
not
me that's
the
just as
health and
dumb.
well-being
That's
of
just as
everybody.
dumb as it's just as dumb as the complete opposite, thinking that government regulation solves everything.
Because there's regulations that are used to capture um, certain industries. Because I know there's something called regulatory capture,
Right.
which is like, for instance, I think the dental industry tried to regulate teeth whitening
Oh, really?
as to be something only dental professionals can do.
Oh, I didn't even know other people could do that.
Well, teeth whitening really isn't like rocket science,
Okay. Do some
but
people
they
do it
try.
themselves with something they buy in a store?
Well, the stuff you get in the store is like not the good stuff, but all
Okay.
it is bleaching your teeth, basically.
Okay. But
So they try to.
some people were like fucking it up somehow to do the lack of regulation.
No, it's just that dental, the dental lobby tried to lobby so that they were the only ones to be able to perform that task.
Oh, okay.
And that would be regulatory capture. So they're
I
trying
see.
to
Yeah.
capture that market through regulations.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, there can be bad aspects of good regulation and good aspects of regulation. Like these are just these sort of nuanced points seem like common sense to me, and I know they do to you too.
Right. It's just like they're all, people that are, all regulations are bad, like the libertarians. And then there's some people on the furthest of left that need to regulate everything.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
But yeah, there's kind of has to be a happy medium in between.
Yeah.
And the only way you could do that is to experiment and see what fails and what works.
Yeah.
And you gotta kind of
So yeah,
continually
what way?
do that.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you just gotta continually do that because
Yeah.
situations always change and they're not always the same either.
Hmm. So were you thinking of any other ways in which drugs being illegal makes makes cartels basically like effective libertarian entrepreneurs?
Um, well, the illegality, of course, because they don't give a fuck about regulations. There's nothing there to stop them in that regard. I don't know if they have some type of internal code amongst, cartels or something like that. Possible something might exist, but the expression of their self-regulation usually turns into some type of bloody intercartel, violence.
And that's another reason
Yeah,
that drugs being illegal causes a whole bunch of unnecessary death and suffering due to drug violence.
right. Because I know when I was younger, um, I was completely against like I had a girlfriend when I was young, and she liked to smoke weed. I was like, well, do you know where that comes from? Like, did you get this across the border in Mexico, or did somebody grow this here domestically? Like, I was like really concerned about like the sources of where she got her weed. I was like, if you're getting this stuff on the cheap from Mexico, I don't want. I don't think it's a good idea for you to even do that. I wasn't really a smoker anyway, but I was trying to get her to learn like the places that manufacture this stuff kind of matter.
Yeah, yeah. I think when I was buying weed illegally, I would do it from my my friendly local drug dealer who my friend knew.
Where they source their stuff from.
I think they got it from he got it from another guy in town. I don't know whether he grew it himself or not, actually.
Right. But yeah, I was like really concerned because one, I lived really close to the border and I would go to Mexico occasionally, and then you get to see kind of like you actually get to see the effects of this stuff, like in
Right.
person. It's not like some news story you hear about. Oh, there was cartel violence over the weekend. Da 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 da. It's like, no, I actually cross the border once a month, and once or twice a month, and you actually get to see this stuff in person. It's not. It's like a reality, and it's like I don't think you should financially benefit these people in any way.
Yeah.
Um, so it's trying to impart that as well. So that's another thing about illegal drugs is that where's the money going to?
Cartels.
Um, it can be going to bad people who
Hmm.
do, bad things. Um, so I think it's also a better way to, like I said, if there's going to be some type of profit or exchange of funds, the funds themselves should benefit, have a positive benefit in society.
Hmm. Yeah,
You
since
know,
weed was legalized in Canada in, I think it was 2016, like it's regulated, so you know that it's safe, and it's driven the prices down too. Weed is now cheaper to buy legally than it used to be to buy it illegally.
right? Because I remember at first, legal weed, from what I heard. from amongst other people. Like when I was kind of first starting out, that legal weed was pretty expensive.
Yeah, it started out that way here too.
Um, but then once it became like a massive industry, legal industry, you have more competition, and I guess that would have driven prices down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for
And
sure.
illegal weed was you don't know what the hell you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
get.
I
You
mean,
know?
it's harder to like cut it with stuff or something like that, like you can do with Coke or something like that. But yeah, you don't know like well, like for example, did you see that Joe Rogan podcast that he's talked about before with that I think it was like that state game warden who worked on the border of Mexico, and he ended up, and this wasn't anywhere near to being in his job description, but he ended up having to go do drug raids on cartels that were growing weed on the border there. And the
Yeah, I
some
remember. I
yeah,
remember he was like like a park ranger or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely remember that. Yeah, and it was like
Yeah.
the cartel working inside the United States,
Yeah.
growing
Yeah.
stuff. I was like, holy crap.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. So, yeah, I think we should get more into a little more detail about those the safe injection sites and the well, we kind of talked about the trauma aspects, but about the safe injection sites basically, and this sort of a approach of the like the rehabilitation that we were talking about and how it's part of it.
Well, I know one of the big factors that the book talked about was the spread of disease. And
Yes.
we're talking about the spread of disease from sharing needles. So
Hmm.
there are many of his patients who had some type of uh, illness, and these aren't just illnesses that come and go. I think a lot of these illnesses that you get from sharing needles end up being um, permanent
Fatal
illnesses
or
and
fatal,
fatal
permanent,
illnesses.
permanent if not fatal. Yeah, like hepatitis and HIV and AIDS.
Right. So a lot of the people that he had to deal with were people who had these chronic illnesses from sharing, dirty needles. So one of the things about being able to provide clean needles is that, hey, you can prevent the spread of disease. And the thing is, it's like these diseases don't necessarily stay within um, like the drug user community. Yes,
Yeah,
they're going to
yeah,
be
and then
more
they get spread,
prevalent,
and then they get spread around, and more people get them, obviously.
right? So um, it's good to make sure that you can regulate disease if you can in that way.
Yes,
Because
certainly.
one, just because the government isn't going to provide needles, say they don't, and like the conservative argument is we shouldn't be providing them,
Yeah,
it's not going to stop them from
we're just
using
allowing them to
drugs.
shoot up.
Yeah, it's not going to stop them from using drugs.
They're allowing them to shoot up without fucking getting HIV or AIDS or hepatitis or dying for some other reason from fucking infected needles.
Right. And then there's also the aspect of overdose.
Yeah,
So, if a lot of, a lot of, okay, so you have the reduction of the spread of bloodborne diseases, and then you have medical professionals on hand that can deal with people who overdose from illegal street drugs.
right.
Um, I'm not sure what the conservative argument that are they saying that these people deserve death? It's like,
I think
yeah,
some of
I don't
them
know.
I think some of them literally think that and admit it openly. Some of them think that and don't admit it. and some of them perhaps don't even consider that fact, or maybe they just think they should be punished. They should be punished anyway, or like just no one should be using that shit. You still
Yeah, it's
there?
pretty sad. Yeah, I'm here. I just had a issue with my connection.
Oh, okay.
Solved.
Okay. Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's weird too
it is really
because
sad. And
um,
you see that dumb mindset coming also from, you know, like supposed logic bros who are all about science and data like Ben Shapiro.
yeah, but their position really isn't scientifically sound.
Exactly. The position
I
is
think,
pretty much like anti-scientific, like you said.
well, like I said, their position is primarily based off of morals and not science.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, that, oh, drug users are bad, therefore they don't deserve help from the government.
But they don't realize that, if they had had the same circumstances as a lot of these people, then they would most likely be drug addicts too. And that certainly doesn't mean that no one has personal responsibility. I bet that's one of the problems that conservatives have too. It's like you're it's like the addicts are uh, abdicating their moral responsibility or something, perhaps in their heads. But it's not that. It's that you can't help. Like, no one wants to be a drug addict. And it's like, do you think any people who got beaten or raped when they were children wanted to get beat or raped? If you were beaten or raped and you had ADHD or autism or something already, and then you started using drugs on top of that, like, I mean, using the drug is a choice, but you're doing it because you've had this tragic experience that no one deserves to have. And then they have these negative synergistic effects on each other, and then you become an addict, and then there's a social stigma. So it helps enforce the negative aspects, and then you're also a criminal, so it's harder to get a job, and you're more likely to end up homeless. And I don't remember whether it's the same thing in Canada, but I think you've told me before that it's illegal to be homeless in certain states, so you're just basically bound to go right back to jail.
All right. One thing I thought was really interesting that Mate brought up was that one of the conservative positions is that these people chose. And one of the things he brings up that he says is that basically every health um, consequence is due to some type of choice that someone makes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's weird that conservatives uniquely select drug addiction and single that out in particular regarding medical intervention. They don't um, single out any other things that lead to bad health outcomes. Like you don't see them banning beer and cigarettes and sugar and
Yeah,
everything else
yeah,
that
exactly.
can lead to these negative health outcomes.
Yeah, or trans
So
fats, or any number of other things.
right. So he sees this as not something that's scientifically driven, and it's more about these drug users are not like us. They're others, and we're not going to treat them like ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The more important and much more effective approach is to treat these people like they're actually people and empathize with them.
Yeah, people going through a struggle, and that not only is this like a physical health issue, it's a mental health issue.
Mm-hmm.
And then you hear about all of these things. Oh, it's not the guns, it's the mental health, but they're not doing anything on the mental health front at all.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
It's like, oh
Yeah,
yeah,
like
we're gonna blame it on
some
something
of the
else.
more progressive YouTubers we follow, like Kyle Kalinske, have pointed that out. Okay, so if mental health factor, why not is a problem? So why don't you have like free psychological treatment or something like that? Because it, in theory, according to your own logic, would reduce the number of mass shootings. But how come you're not okay
Right,
with that?
right. Yeah, it's just a cluster, man.
Yep.
It's just, I don't know. It's emotionally charged politics instead of, taking a look at data and saying what could benefit society at large.
Yeah, certainly. And I was thinking too, like a lot of like a lot of homeless people are like that stereotype that a lot of homeless people tend to be drug addicts is it seems largely true as far as I know, and like conservative people tend to have a massive problem with homeless people too, and it would so it would probably in theory reduce the amount of homeless people too if you like legalized or decriminalized drugs, or even if you're not doing that, set up in safe injection sites with psychological counselors there.
Yeah, because it sounds like there's people who are functionally addicted. I think he made kind of a. I think he mentioned some type of famous person that was involved in type of in the realm of STEM. He was like a doctor who was addicted to morphine, and he was incredibly productive despite his morphine addiction.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of people can be functional addicts like you said. Yeah.
All right, so I think one of the things in order to, harm reduction is making these people functional members of the society.
Yeah,
Even if they might have,
they're becoming contributing members to society, like you said. They're getting jobs, they're making money, they're contributing to the market, all that kind of stuff. You would think that sort of thing would, sound good to even conservative people.
yeah, but I think on their end, it's just, hey, let's shun these people. And then when they're in the place that is the most low, let's just kind of ignore those people and pretend that they don't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it started changing when this fentanyl epidemic just got huge and it started affecting people who weren't necessarily in the lower echelons of social class. Like we were seeing it
Yeah,
on the
like
highest levels, like Hunter Biden.
not just upper class white people, lower class white people too.
Yeah, like
Or I mean
even
other way around, other way around.
yeah, it's like so high profile now that it's the president's son is an example,
Yeah, yeah, Hunter Biden.
right? So now that it's not something that, and then you got your Hollywood types and stuff that you've heard, who've abused cocaine. We've seen so many different people that have overdosed various drugs, various musical artists and actors and people like that over the years who have succumbed to an addiction here and there, like so many that have died from fentanyl overdoses in the past few years.
Yeah.
That it's just becoming,
Was Prince one of them?
yeah. Prince died of fentanyl overdose,
Okay.
um, specifically fentanyl. But yeah, all these people um, succumbing to these drugs. But even when we talking about the higher level people, they might have access to cleaner drugs than people who have to buy them from shady people on the street. You know, but
Yeah,
fentanyl
exactly.
is so dangerous, and it's like it's that it can kill even people who have a lot of money
Yeah, of course.
because
Yeah.
The risk factor is that much higher.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah. And if the like politicians in particular, because they tend to be like elites, they they seem to not care much about lower class people, like black or brown people from lower class neighborhoods, or white people from lower class neighborhoods, or like, white trash people in the South or something like that. They're more likely to care about rich coastal elites or someone like that, like you said.
Yeah, because I think the best thing that could happen is like people, at least who are part of these large political families and dynasties and things, they probably have these black sheep in their family that they can't try to sweep under the rug.
Oh yeah, yeah. I bet a lot of rich families have a Hunter Biden.
Yeah, so and it's interesting. Like, what if these people became more vocal about their issues? Like, imagine how many LGBT people are like told to suppress themselves because they're related to this politician who's anti-LGBT.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it
so
seems
I don't
like
know.
that kind of it seems like a it seems like a fair number of even conservatives don't like that sort of stuff, like doubling down on the culture war shit and demonizing trans people and shit, and like like Ron DeSantis instituting authoritarian measures, like instituting that law in Texas that got struck down by the Supreme Court, that that minors who were transgender had to literally their families had to be inspected by government employees to see if they were trans enough, and
That's crazy.
any sort of gender affirming care, including hormone blockers, were not allowed for minors either.
Right. It's crazy.
Like, it
It's
doesn't
like,
mean
man,
gender affirming care doesn't automatically mean that you're like cutting a child's dick off or something. That's not that's not necessarily what it means. In fact, it's
yeah, and it
usually
could
not
be,
what it means.
yeah, it could even be like a regular non-trans person has like some extreme hormonal imbalances.
Yeah.
Like, what if a girl has like naturally high testosterone and she starts growing a beard and shit, and
Yeah, yeah, like you
like the
wouldn't want that.
government, yeah, and she wants to appear feminine, but the government is not allowing her to go on any type of treatment because she's like 16.
Hmm.
Like, imagine being a 16-year-old and you have to like shave twice a week and you're a
Jeez. That
girl.
would suck if you're a girl, yeah.
Yeah, it's same thing with a boy. Like, what if you have too much estrogen and you're like growing boobs?
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
for sure.
it could be a tough time in high school. You know,
Yeah, definitely.
even after high school could be a tough time.
Definitely, yeah.
And so I think the psychological impact of these things that happen definitely linger on. And so I don't know. I think it's just stupid that they're trying to. It's like, oh yeah, big government. Us conservatives hate it, and they're basically enacting it on medical decisions. It seems too authoritarian.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, it seems like even a lot of people who claim to be anti-authoritarian, pretty much regardless of their political persuasion, get pretty authoritarian if they can get what they want sometimes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So this next election cycle should be interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I wonder if I don't I've heard some people say that the Republican nominee is definitely going to be Trump. I've heard some people say that it's definitely going to be DeSantis. Uh, I've
I have no
heard people
idea.
say
Just
Democratic nominee is definitely going to be Joe Biden. I've heard people say that it definitely won't be him. I don't know.
Because I think if DeSantis wins the primary, then DeSantis is likely going to be the next president.
I kind of think think that he would be worse than Trump in some ways, because
Yeah, but here's the thing,
I've been
DeSantis,
somewhat convinced by people talking about how, he has a more clear agenda than Trump, and he's smart enough and more willing to commit to goals to be able to have more bad shit happen.
yeah, but I think DeSantis has more normie appeal than Trump does.
That's probably true.
And that's kind of what the Republican candidate is going to need to win the election.
Yeah, because the people don't seem to people just don't seem to like Trump as much anymore since he didn't win the election in 2020, obviously. I think they just people it seems like people are less attracted to the culture war shit in politicians.
That's probably the case, but also um, DeSantis is not as polarizing as Trump, and Trump has a lot of baggage,
He certainly
like an
does.
extreme amount of baggage.
Yeah, like how many times has he gotten indicted now?
I think it's three, and then he's gonna get the fourth one is coming. So I don't know.
I really
I
doubt.
just
I
feel
mean,
like
I really doubt that he's going to end up in prison, but I also really doubted that something like January 6th would ever happen.
yeah, I don't know. I think a prison time might be something. I think it could happen, to be honest, because I think the most damning stuff is like the election stuff,
Yeah.
like the fraud and all that. I think might just be like a financial slap on the wrist or something. But the stuff that's surrounding mainly the January 6th charges, I think could have some substantial jail time on
Yeah.
them. So we'll see. It's I don't know. I just don't know how anyone could stand behind Trump. I don't get it.
Especially like law and order conservatives. He's like
Yeah.
fucking hard to say unless you're and obviously a lot of people are doing this, but unless you just think Trump is a scapegoat, the FBI and the deep state have been targeting him, man.
Well, I think he's used the outrage algorithm to his benefit. He's kind of capitalized on that. So problem is that I find that the outrage algorithm tends to capture people who were otherwise wouldn't care about politics.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So we have that going on.
Yeah, like Matt
Yeah,
Taibbi said, it's like professional wrestling, right?
right. And they're gonna probably ramp it up on the Democrat side. Because I believe there was some of that during the last election cycle,
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
where people saw, okay, these people are batshit crazy. There's no way we can allow these batshit crazy people to basically gain leadership positions, and we're not necessarily for the candidate that is being presented to us, but we really hate the opposition. So we're going to make sure this opposition doesn't get in the office.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like that might be the case for either candidate this coming election cycle. It seems like certain conservatives really hate Joe Biden
Oh yeah, for
for some
sure. Yeah.
reason. That's like this milk toast motherfucker is like I don't know how that they how Biden is such a hateable person. He's like so milk toast. It's not
He's
even
just like
funny.
a like a milk toast liberal.
milk toast like grandpa,
Yeah.
um, but they hate him so much. It's like,
Did you see that
um,
whole thing uh about why Tim Pool prefers Trump to DeSantis?
I know there were like really dumb reasons, like an
Yeah,
AI
like
ad that DeSantis.
he prefers Trump because the DeSantis campaign released deep fake photos of Trump with Fauci.
Yeah, ridiculous stuff, basically. Like un completely things that are unsubstantial to society at large.
Yeah, and he likes the um DeSantis's like anti-trans agenda stuff. So it's like he's going he's going like anti-vaccine rather than over his anti-trans stuff. I guess he values that
Yeah,
more.
yeah, and these are all the people that don't know any trans people, so they don't really care what happens to them. You know.
Man, you should see like it wasn't a massive amount but there were some really homophobic comments on my video I made the other day about Thaddeus Russell defending drag queens.
Really? Like, what was going on?
Like one guy, one guy was like, but basically they were all showing their obvious assumption that if you're a drag queen, you're automatically a fucking pedophile who's trying to groom children.
Okay, I'm not sure what that has to do with being a drag queen.
They think that all drag queens are automatically like that, even though that's probably almost never the case.
Yeah, I don't get it. Like, I would understand like a priest trying to groom a child because that's an obvious and easy
Yeah.
thing to point to.
That's why I said on
Um,
social media the other day, I bet Catholic priests are way more likely to molest children than trans people and drag queens.
yeah, I don't get it. It's just they try to. I don't know. It's like mental gymnastics gone awry,
It is.
basically. Um, and it's kind of like a return of the trope that gay people are pedophiles.
Yeah, about gay guys, right?
Yeah, it's the same return. It's just I was gonna say pegging it, adding it on to a different group of people
Right.
who are weird, considered weird and abnormal, and you know, anything that's not normal, they must have something. They must be a pedophile or
It
something.
doesn't make any sense. Like the the way Thaddeus Russell was explaining it on that clip was well, like why would you just assume that a guy is a pedophile because he wears a dress? That doesn't make sense.
What? I gotta check that out. What was the circumstance in which he was talking
It
about?
was a little section that I commented on from uh the Hotep Jesus's podcast, and in which Thaddeus Russell was a guest, and I liked particularly that section and the section in which Thaddeus Russell was talking about how conservatives think that the founding fathers were like like really small government advocates, but he said that uh, Thomas Jefferson in reality was the first neoconservatives, and all of the founding fathers explicitly wanted a global American empire.
Hmm, interesting.
Yeah.
I'll have to
So,
check that out sometime.
yeah. Yeah, it's worth watching. Anyway, yeah, we were well, what else did we talk about? Well, actually, you know, I was thinking too, in terms of Gabor Mate, to go back to the book, I remember it seems like he has more effective psychological advice in general than Jordan Peterson too. Because remember, I think we talked a while ago about the fact that Jordan Peterson was commenting, or no, Gabor Mate was commenting on Jordan Peterson saying this or describing one of his rules, basically, I think from 12 rules for life, that something about carrying your own cross or carrying your own burden and stuff, and he was saying this is just
Hmm.
a recipe for psychological repression. You want to, like, if you have a burden, if you have a psychological problem, it, like, obviously discipline is important, but if you have like a serious problem, then you should, talk to your friends and family about it. That's that's one of the things they're supposed to be for.
Right. Interesting.
And if
Yeah.
you
He.
if you talk about that in the context of addicts too,
You know what's
then
funny about
that
that?
that
Like,
encourages
especially.
not treating addiction.
You know what's especially funny and hypocritical about that is that he's basically trying to eliminate himself as a profession. Like, all right, everybody, carry their burdens. Um, what's the use of a clinical psychologist
Yeah,
in that kind of setting?
yeah,
it's,
exactly.
like, it's like, okay, like sounds like you're kind of saying that your job is bullshit.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
It's obviously not, but it's just why would he say something like that? It's just
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, his psychological advice seems very good sometimes and very bad other times. Like the most obvious stuff that he said is good advice, like, stand up straight with your shoulders back. And I like some of his rules, like pet a cat when you see it. Um, that recent one talked about, in which he was basically saying that art is the foundation of culture, and that you shouldn't bother children when they're skateboarding unless you have to with your job, of course. And and then there are other ones that are just stupid, like oh, one of them is don't be ideological, even though that's actually impossible for human beings.
yeah. Is that an actual rule?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's impossible. It's not. Don't be ideological. It's not even something that can be done.
exactly.
Yeah. It's, um,
Yeah, I wonder what Jordan Peterson's approach is to addicts, drug addicts.
I don't know. That's an interesting question considering he was one. I don't know.
Yeah,
Well, I would say that isn't an addict like kind of always an addict? Like you're not um, off
yeah,
the
I think
hook
so.
even if you
Like the
quit. Even
the
if you quit the addiction, you're not really off the hook. You're still.
yeah, yeah, like that anachronism about there being at like addictive personalities and people who don't have addictive personalities. That seems kind of true. Like just I think this is borne out by data, but also just in my anecdotal experience, I've known people who've gotten addicted to things, and they tend to just get obsessed with something if they like it, and then they get addicted to it, whether it's a drug or a behavior or something like that. And then
Mhm.
I tend to not have those problems with things.
Right. Oh yeah, I can get that. I know that there's certain things that are more highly addictive than other things.
Hmm.
Um,
And then, but then
is
you
that
can, if you have an addictive personality, you can just get addicted to a behavior that isn't addictive either, like workaholism.
yeah? Because I know as far as like addictive substances go, um, only thing I've ever been addicted to is nicotine.
Right. That's probably,
Um,
would you say that's the most addictive drug that you've tried, probably?
mm, I guess I've taken narcotics for pain and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Um, Coffee is considered to be addictive, but I don't get like I can go like a week without drinking coffee. So or or I can go a while without caffeine. Um,
Oh, okay.
like I'm not the type of person who wakes up every morning and has to make the first thing they do is make a cup of coffee. I
Hmm.
only do that if I remember to do it. It's not something I have a habit of.
Okay.
Um,
I usually have coffee at least almost every day, if not every day. But
Yeah,
I usually don't drink it as soon as I wake up. It usually is a little while after I wake up before I have some.
yeah, because I haven't even had coffee today,
Oh, okay.
but I did drink a little bit of an energy drink though.
Okay.
But that was
Those
only
work.
once I got to work. Yeah.
Okay.
Usually I keep energy drinks at work and I only drink them while I'm at work. So I
That's a
don't
good
drink
idea.
them at home at all.
That's a good idea because then your tolerance won't go up.
Right. I don't keep them at home.
Hmm.
I usually do it to prevent sleepiness or to combat it.
That makes sense.
I don't casually drink energy drinks. um,
They can be expensive.
so it could be, but I get most of my energy drinks from Dollar Tree.
Oh, right.
So I don't, it's like this is just $1.25. It's not much.
Okay.
And one energy drink for the day will do it. It's very rare would I ever drink more than one in a day,
Yeah, I'm the same
unless
way.
the caffeine content was really low. Um, but
Sometimes it
most
can
of
be
them
really
is
high. I saw those like the coffee energy drinks. I don't remember whether it's just Java or Starbucks ones that you can get. I almost got one once, but I always like to get the sugar-free ones. But I wanted to get one because it has 300 grams of caffeine, but you can't get sugar-free versions of those. And energy drinks that are not sugar-free have like a fucking unbelievable amount of sugar, like sometimes
yeah.
50
I
or
don't know
60
why
grams
they
of
have
sugar.
so much. I have no idea why they have so much sugar in them, like the sugary ones.
Hmm.
Like I remember I had this rock star, which is like the size of a Red Bull can. And you'd say, hey, it's the size of a Red Bull can. It can't have that many calories. And I looked at it, it's like at 220. I was like, holy crap. This can has more calories than a Mountain Dew. And a Mountain
How
Dew
much
is
how
almost,
much sugar did it have?
I don't remember. I just remember seeing 220 and I was like, WTF? Like, why? Why is it so high? Um, well, usually most of the ones I drink are sugar free. And I don't know why, but for some reason, energy drinks don't taste like diet soda. Like diet soda just tastes gross. Um, Energy drinks taste okay. They're not even like the sugar-free ones taste okay. And I don't know why
Yeah.
that is. Like they're
I think it's
tolerable, but
the I wonder if they use different sweeteners maybe or artificial sweeteners.
maybe that might be an absence of high fructose corn syrup. Maybe I don't know
Yeah, it could
what
be
it
that
might be.
too. I get this diet pop that's sweetened with stevia, so it tastes a lot better than regular diet pop.
I've had a couple that are like what's it called? There's
Zevia.
one that yeah, that one. I've had that one. Some of those flavors are hit and miss.
I like
But
the creamy root beer flavor the most.
yeah, I think I liked which one do I? I think I like the Dr. Pepper wannabe one.
That one's
It's
good
like the
too.
one I think it's called Dr. Zevia.
I'm not sure I've tried that one
uh,
actually. Hmm.
yeah, and those Zevias are not cheap either. They're usually like for a 6 pack, it's like $5.
Yeah. Yeah,
Five
we only get them
dollars.
when they're on sale.
But yeah, usually I don't even drink soda at home. The only carbonated beverages I have at home are sparkling water.
Okay. I
And
like
then any
to
other,
I like to have both of those and have a light beer in the fridge sometimes.
yeah, my go-to is sparkling water with a tablespoon of cider vinegar in it.
Why apple cider vinegar?
Because it gives it like At one, I like kombucha, and apple cider vinegar makes sparkling water taste like kombucha.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's another carbonated drink I often have in my fridge is kombucha.
That's good. It's got lots of probiotics.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And kombucha is typically lower in calorie content as well.
that's good. Okay, so were there any other important aspects of the book that we haven't discussed yet, do you think?
Well, some of the anecdotes were pretty interesting. Some of the quote unquote characters that were examined, like
Hmm.
the old punk Nazi guy, was
Yeah,
an
yeah,
interesting character.
yeah, yeah, he was.
Um,
He had a really cynical mindset.
yeah, and I think Mate kind of notated him as one of his most intelligent patients that he's ever
Hmm.
had. Was widely read, but was basically a white supremacist.
Yeah,
But it seemed like his white supremacy was more like an act than an actual true belief,
yeah,
at
I
least
could
in the
see that a
way.
little bit at least.
Yeah, so I think Mate kind of summed it up to um, him wanting to feel some sense of superiority to the guys of that mindset.
That makes
Even
sense.
though like he regularly interacted with these people, and I guess one of the relationships they discussed was that between Amate's son and the neo-Nazi, that they would sing and like have jam sessions together,
Right.
um,
Hmm.
which was like, okay, his son is a Jew. So they all, I think in the towards the end of his story, he would just say, yeah, like I'm really sorry about all that. I didn't really mean it, and all that.
Right.
But it seems like a lot of the characters that we did hear about usually ended in some type of, they usually died in some form or fashion that had to
Hmm.
do with their drug addiction.
It was especially sad that that one woman he was talking about who I think she was I think she was born a coke or a heroin addict because her mother was pregnant when she was born, and then she was pregnant now with I think maybe at least her second kid, or maybe it was her first kid, but they were going to be born an addict too because she couldn't stop doing, I don't remember whether it was coke or heroin when she was pregnant.
Yeah, it's like this vicious cycle.
Yeah,
And
like
there's like some interesting things.
multi-generational.
And there's some interesting things that I did learn about. Like I didn't know that you couldn't, like if you're pregnant and the 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 woman, if she was already on drugs, I didn't know you can stop them from. You had to like continue it because that could harm the baby.
Oh, right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, because they said that the baby could go through withdrawals and that could be really bad for the baby.
Hmm.
So they would have to continue to be either on methadone or use whatever illegal narcotic that they were using at the time. I thought that was
Right.
pretty crazy. I didn't know the dynamic was like that.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that before.
And then we saw, Mate having to get over the idea, because I know there were a couple instances where he actually helped inject the drugs himself into the
Yeah,
patients,
yeah.
um, which, he personally had to go over that. And then we got to hear about his own addiction, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, yeah, I
His
mentioned that earlier.
addiction.
That was one of the most interesting parts of the book to me too. Him talking about his workaholism, his work addiction, and how he's had some of the exact same behaviors as some of the junkies he's helped.
Well, we also need to mention is his addiction to buying classical music.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
he didn't even listen to most of the stuff he bought. He just kind
right.
of bought it on impulse.
Yeah, that's an interesting addiction.
and that he spent thousands on, supposedly. Like, wow, that is a really interesting one. And he has
Yeah.
like these rare collections of classical music CDs and
Hmm.
albums. So like, that's a weird addiction. But he
Yeah.
he's an actual fanatic for classical music, so I guess that made sense. It wouldn't make sense if he didn't care about the classical music at all, but he just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
buy the music. But yeah, it was just interesting because his addiction wasn't drug related. Yet it was like extremely compulsive. Like he had a compulsion to buy this stuff.
And you can,
So,
like, especially with his workaholism, you can understand how he would have trouble with that because he's helping people so much, and in some cases saving people's lives. So it's like I can understand how you would feel bad about working less because it's like you're helping less people in your head, perhaps.
yeah, it's interesting because there is a moral component to his work. Is that he's actually saving people's lives,
Hmm.
and it's almost like that itself can drive somebody to work too much.
Exactly.
And I can see how that could definitely happen to people,
Definitely. Yeah. It's
especially in
happened to me
his.
before. I was a workaholic for a little while, like years ago. It was like fucking torturous.
What was the work that you're obsessing over?
It was a lot of different things. It was like um it was my job, and it was mainly not my job though because I just had a shitty part-time job that I didn't like, but it was that and just working out and doing creative work and just being obsessed with completing every single thing on my schedule every day, come hell or high water, and
Mhm.
doing all these projects and stuff sometimes, and just like I remember almost having a panic attack once because I didn't have time to shave. And I didn't realize at this point, because I didn't know at this point that I had OCD, that that was probably somewhat associated with my OCD at least.
Mhm. So a panic attack because you couldn't shave.
Yeah.
Um, After that episode happened, how did you think about that?
Uh, well, I didn't change right away, but it was one of the one of the many main things that helped me kind of learn to appreciate more balance in life. Like I was really influenced by all those like hardcore discipline guys too. Like I was obsessed with Jocko Willink for a while during that period too.
Hmm.
He gets
Was
kind of overboard with discipline.
yeah, his is what extreme was it?
Extreme
Extreme,
ownership.
yeah, extreme ownership. So
Discipline
so
equals
he
freedom.
not really.
I used to have that as a
um,
screensaver on my phone.
yeah,
Or I mean a
I don't
background
know.
wallpaper on my phone.
Yeah, discipline. I don't necessarily think that equals freedom, but
Yeah, it's
okay.
kind of paradoxical, or I mean
Yeah.
contradictory.
I think maybe in his own head, but
Yeah.
I guess
Well,
it
it's
just
important to
depends on how
like
your brain
work
works.
hard and work hard, but then also appreciate life because like you only have one life as far as we know. So
Right.
like working is important, but so is enjoying life.
Right. Right. That is true. It really depends on your line of work too.
Hmm. Yeah, for
Because
sure.
there are some lines of work that allow you to do both simultaneously.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And there are some that, many that do not.
Yeah, most people don't like their jobs, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
So, definitely depends. But yeah, I liked his explanation and his I considered like the first half of his book like the background to why he is an advocate of harm reduction.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Um, and I thought that was a really important part to include because oftentimes you won't have the personal stories and anecdotes to go along with these policy changes and everything. But
Yes,
him being on the front lines and being able to see a lot of these people in their worst states gives you a different perspective. And I liked that he did show that he was human. Like there were times
exactly.
where he did get upset at these people, and there were times where he realized that um, he needed to be like more of a centered person when dealing with these people and not get like too agitated with them.
Yeah,
It's not
exactly.
everything that happens in the way that they react is something that they can control.
Yeah, of course, because they're like the drugs and mental health problems can have negative synergistic effects on each other. And yeah, I like that aspect of the book too, that there were like it wasn't just data driven, but it also wasn't just anecdotes. So it he talked about his personal experiences and how like his approach is also borne out by data.
Yeah, and that nagging a drug addict to death basically never works.
Yeah, obviously.
Um, the drug addict has to have their own motivation. You
Yeah, they
can't
have to
just
like realize that they have a problem and work on it themselves. You can't force them to do it.
right. So yeah, I like the book because I didn't even know it was going to be a treatise on harm reduction. It was the first. I thought it was going to be like a complete memoir from beginning to end.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, because it does shift midway through the book into being kind of more of a data-driven approach to figuring out why people get addicted. Um, going into psychology of those things, about how people are brought up, DNA, even like genetics and everything else. Like he gets really into the weeds
Yeah.
about like almost to the level of like oh, what's that guy? The guy that worked with the baboons.
Robert Sapolsky?
Yeah, he kind of gets into that like weeds level of explaining like the science behind addiction at certain points in the book.
And the
Yeah,
various different types of factors that go into it, like you were saying.
right. So like the second half of the book, I did get some Sapolsky vibes of him explaining science and things related to addiction.
Hmm.
And I thought it was a good combination, like the combination of personal anecdotes, like personal stories about these addicts, what they faced, the difficulties of the current system, and trying to ultimately treat these people as human beings who deserve some type of dignity,
Exactly. Yes, definitely. Well
and
said.
treating these things as medical conditions instead of like criminality.
Yes.
It's like these people have medical issues that need to be treated medically, not through
Yes.
the criminal system.
Yeah, yeah. The like as we were talking about, addiction is a it's a biological and psychological or a medical and psychological problem. It's not a criminal problem. And like you were saying, yeah, treating these people like human beings instead of criminals is way more effective at harm reduction. Reduces the amount of these people who die, reduces the amount of drug addicts and homeless people that are around, and pretty much all good effects.
Right, right. So yeah, I don't know what I gave it.
I
Um,
was just gonna ask you what your rating was. I think I gave it like 4 or 5 stars.
that's what I'm thinking here on my end. I would say 4 or 5. If you want to learn about the front lines of addiction and a good advocate for kind of changing the paradigm on how we deal with it currently, at least in my country. I know in your country you might have more of a penchant to using harm reduction than in
For
mine.
obviously I mentioned we legalize weed, and there are like obviously because Gabor Mate is talking about his experience in safe injection sites in Vancouver.
Hmm.
Obviously that's happened in Canada, and I actually heard recently my girlfriend was telling me about a not specifically a safe injection site, but a safe consumption site that was being set up in town here pretty soon. And I think it happens in other places, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure where. I don't think it's like a super common thing, but it does happen in some places.
Right. Um, but yeah, we just need to see that these people are people with medical problems that need to be dealt with through through science and medical intervention,
Hmm.
rather than criminal. I know some of the things lead to criminal acts,
Hmm.
but those criminal acts are based off of some medical condition that they have that needs to be treated.
Hmm. And they
Um,
would likely would not be committing those crimes if they were not drug addicts.
we're not drug addicts or had access to, um, safe, either safe drugs or safe drug alternatives. Like I know I mentioned methadone to get people
Yeah,
off of
yeah,
street narcotics and things
yeah.
like
Like
that.
that methadone user who became a functional member of society by being able to take methadone and then go to his job.
Right. So just giving people a safe outlet to try to overcome these things. I guess it's not just, hey, because right now, I guess the conservative method is you deal on this stuff on your own. We're not going to help you.
Yeah, which is like tremendously difficult and borderline impossible for many people.
Right. So yeah, it's a serious. This is something that seriously needs to be looked into. Um, of course, there's probably going to be large swath of people who I don't know. I guess you want to call them conservative or religious that just will not tolerate these types of views, which is unfortunate. But a lot of even insane people or people that do bad things can attribute some of those things to medical problems.
Hmm. And
Like how
also,
many football players have
if you're talking
got,
about like a conservative or a religious person might have trouble with this harm reduction approach, what about the religious idea of redemption and, allowing people to correct their mistakes and reform and become better people and become productive members of society and learn from their mistakes and all that kind of stuff?
well, they seem to only care about that if the person is post addiction and
Yeah,
they've
true.
already
Hmm.
they've already kicked it without, you know.
Yeah.
I know there are religious based programs like it. I know Mate does go over like 12 steps and kind of his alternative to 12 steps,
Yeah,
but you're going to need more than that. It's not going to, you're going to need more than that to get over some of these things.
certainly. Yeah,
Um, and that's where this harm reduction comes in.
exactly. All right.
Yeah,
Well, I think we've talked about most of the main aspects of the book here. So thanks for talking with me, man. Always fun. And
yeah, of
thanks
course.
everyone for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Definitely read the book if you haven't done so. Let us know your thoughts of the book if you have. And subscribe to the channel. Smash the like button. Make sweet love to it. Elbow drop it. Do whatever you want as long as you press it. Um, click that bell to be notified when I come out with new videos. Not sure which one I'm going to do next. Might be, actually, I think it might be either another theological one about a paper about why there's suffering in the world, or I will continue my series on Michel Foucault's History of Sexuality book. So check out those upcoming ones. Check out my link in the Patreon, link to my Patreon page. Link is in the description as usual. Check out Dusty's channel, Woke Centrist. And oh, we were going to talk about Book of Eli on there next.
Yeah, that's the next thing that we're gonna do on our channel, on my channel. Let's
Okay.
talk about the Book of
Uh,
Eli.
right. So yeah, we could probably do that tomorrow, Monday, or Tuesday. I haven't rewatched it yet, so I'll
I
make
haven't
sure I do.
either, so
Okay.
I still need to watch it,
Okay. Yeah, I'll make a point of
or
doing that soon.
at least rewatch it.
Yeah.
It's been
Yeah,
a
I've seen
while.
it once, but it was years and years ago.
Yeah, I think I've seen it like maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, maybe.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks again for talking, Ben. Thanks again, everyone, for watching. And yeah, anything else you want to say? Any plugs or anything before we end it?
No, that's all good. That's all I got for this session.
All right. Thanks again, everyone, and adios until next time.